Part 30. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 293. Chi Heiran's words opened a door to the world for Mu Yangling. Looking at her reaction, Chi Heiran knew that she hadn't thought about that, so he snorted and laughed at her. He said he was going to do business, even a door-to-door business none found. Chi Heiran said sternly, "Go and tell them that all outsiders are now prohibited from entering Hanzhong Mansion. Now those who can come and go freely are big merchants. They may not be able to make money in the Yamen for the rest of their lives." The filial piety in the Yamen made them dispel the idea of going to Hanzhong Mansion. Mu Yangling had never done this kind of thing that was suspected of crossing the river and demolishing the bridge. After all, she was asked to inquire about the documents, but she cut off his business. Chi Heiran gave her a blank look. "I really want to save face and suffer, let them wait, and I will see them in person." "Don't," Mu Yangling pulled him back, "you can't afford to fall on me, but you have to bear the name. I'd better go and talk to them." Mu Yangling continued to build himself up in his heart, saying, "This is normal in the business world, right?" Chi Heiran vented his anger at her through his nostrils. "It's nothing more than a normal thing. Mu Yangling has a document signed by Chi Ziyuan himself, not to mention going to Hanzhong Mansion. Even if she goes all the way to the capital, she doesn't need to go to the Yamen to lead her way. Moreover, given her relationship with Chi Heiran, the Yamen servants of Hanzhong Mansion really dare not take a cut of her goods. Maybe Chi Heiran still wants them to come to his door, then he will have a reason to punish them, but he is not a fool to come to Hanzhong Mansion to be the magistrate. He has already given orders to his subordinates. Anyone can check. However, brothers Chi Ziyuan were as far away as possible, so the government servants pretended not to see Fan Zijian's goods coming in and out of Hanzhong Mansion, and they didn't even dare to ask him for the entry tax. And the soldiers guarding the city? They just go to help push the cart. So Mu Yangling was fighting for power once. Mu Yangling returned home to do a night of psychological training, and with a reddish face, he took Zhonglu and Ziyuheng to find Butcher Qin. The person who came with Butcher Qin was not a stranger. Last time, Butcher Qin asked him to collect Mu Yangling's sheep. His surname was Hua, and he was also a butcher. Mu Yangling has never been good at beating around the bush, so although he blushed, he still said, "Uncle Qin, I asked you for it." Now Hanzhong Mansion is very heavily guarded, and only big merchants can pass. People were buried, with your worth, I'm afraid. Qin Butcher and Hua Butcher's faces were a little gloomy. In fact, they had already found out the news yesterday. After all, Mu Yangling was just a child of a military family, so Qin Butcher mainly focused on the Yamen servants in the Yamen. Maybe it was because they felt embarrassed for taking 20 taels of silver from them for nothing. Yesterday, the Yamen servant finally told the truth. Not to mention them, even officials below the 6th rank in the Yamen cannot enter Hanzhong Mansion, and those who can pass Xingzhou. All the people who entered the mansion were big merchants who were jointly guaranteed by officials from both the Xingzhou Mansion and the Hanzhong Mansion, and then left a copy in Xieying. Today's news of Mu Yangling only made them more convinced of the news. This can be said to be a shocking thunderbolt for the two of them. Not to mention the wasted efforts of the past few days, they spent more than 30 taels of money on food and shelter, inquiring about news and finding ways. This is their family. Half a year's income. This time, in order to be able to buy goods, he sacrificed his old face and the money borrowed from the bank. Besides, the Hanzhong Mansion is currently being searched very strictly, and extortion by the Yamen servants happens from time to time. We are doing small business. If we are taken away by others, there will really be nothing left. Qin Butcher forced a laugh, cupped his hands to Mu Yangling and said, "Anyway, I want to thank Miss Mu, and I'm sorry for the waste of my trip." Turning back to Hua Butcher again, he said, "Brother, this time I have troubled you." "What did the elder brother say?" Hua Tuhu said angrily, Am I the kind of person who doesn't take responsibility? I was the one who made a fuss about going through this with you at the time. If you lose money, you lose money. At worst, tighten your belt, it will be back to normal in 2 years, it's just you, your mother's medicine money. Butcher Chin interrupted him with a wave of his hand. There must be a way for the car to reach the mountain. I don't believe that God can block my way. Mu Yangling's face turned red when he heard that, and when he was about to speak, Ziyuheng took the lead and said, Uncle Chin, it's not impossible. What method? Chin Tuhu and Hua Tuhu looked up at Ziyuheng, but they didn't have much hope for her solution. Ziyuheng looked at Mu Yangling with a smile and said, Cousin, don't you have a document stamped by Brother Qi himself? Uncle Chin and the others can't go, so you can go. Chin Butcher and Hua Butcher looked at Mu Yangling with piercing eyes. Mu Yangling could only follow the trend, nodded and said, I can go, but my paperwork can only bring one person there, and that person must be my family member, and must have household registration and directions. Butcher Chin and Butcher Hua were not fools, they immediately thought of the solution, and said with bright eyes, Miss Mu, I have a business, I wonder if you are interested. I know what kind of business you two are talking about, but now that the end of the year is approaching, I'm not sure if the herdsmen in Hanshong Mansion still have their sheep. As long as the girl is willing to go, she will definitely find it. When the time comes, the girl will give you a price. We will take the goods from you. At most, we will earn less. At least it is not a waste of time. Yes, but you have to wait at the checkpoint. I am in a hurry to go home. It is impossible to drive the sheep to Xingzhou Mansion for you, you know, it will take her a day to ride a horse from here to Hanshong Mansion. If she drives the sheep on foot, that would take 2 days. Butcher Chin nodded repeatedly, and said, Don't worry, Miss Mu, we'll wait for you at the checkpoint, and we'll trade there, both money and goods, at this price. Don't decide on the price yet. I'll talk about it when I get the goods. As you all know, I don't know how much the herdsmen are asking for now. Butcher Chin and Butcher Hua could only restrain their eagerness and directly reported the money to themselves. We brought a total of 800 taels of silver this time, young lady, let's look at the purchase. Mu Yangling didn't expect them to be so frank. Since that was the case, Mu Yangling also returned the sincerity and said, Don't worry, I spent less effort this time, and the price will not embarrass you. Butcher Chin breathed a sigh of relief, and after sending the man away, Butcher Hua said anxiously, Why did you tell us all about our bottom line? Isn't this something that people can control? Brother, when did I miss you, brother? Chin Butcher said, This Miss Mu is a womanizer, she is no less straightforward than me. If we treat her sincerely, she will treat us sincerely, too. I've calculated in my mind just now, as long as her final asking price is not higher than 4 taels, we can still make money this trip. Butcher Hua sighed, I'm afraid that she will directly ask for $4, $2, or $3. By then, we will each know that we will make $3 or $2, and that will be no different from losing money. It will take 5 days to travel from Hanshong Mansion to Xinyuan Mansion woolen cloth. So we can only gamble. Butcher Chin was also a little disappointed. This time it was because his mother's illness made him flustered, otherwise he would not have borrowed 400 taels to take risks. Hua Tuhu also felt that the past few days had been too exciting, and his heart might not be able to bear it. No matter whether this trip was a flat or a loss, he felt that he would only do it this time. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 294. Mu Yangling went directly to the herdsman who sold her sheep last time, and Ziyuheng was the only one with her. Mu Yangling didn't bring Zhongwu, but chose to bring Ziyuheng because she felt that women's lives in this era are inherently difficult. She hoped that Ziyuheng would know more, and only if she has the ability can she be her own master. The more places she travels and the more things she sees, the wider her horizons will be. The two entered Han's Hong mansion, and because it was getting late, they found an inn to stay, and went to the village early the next morning to find the herdsman. The villages in Han's Hong mansion are even more dilapidated than Seeing Joe mansion, and they look even more desolate against the backdrop of white snow. Ziyuheng was very touched. Cousin, didn't you say that Han's Hong mansion is more prosperous than our Seeing Joe mansion? Look at the city, enough it is twice as big as our capital city in Seeing Joe prefecture. Why is the village so dilapidated? It wasn't like this when we came last time. That's what you haven't seen in the Han's Hong prefecture city that you just took back. It's deserted and there are few people walking around. What's the use? The borderland is blocked by Dezhou and Jingguo, and Dezhou can't be prosperous. Now that Han's Hong prefecture has merchants, it seems prosperous, but there are no merchants in these villages. Mu Yangling explained, when we came last time, the houses here were a little broken, but we could still see them. Those collapsed ones should have been crushed by the snow. From this we can see that the people of Han's Hong mansion ruled in Jin Kingdom before. It's not easy going down. Will the sheep be frozen to death? Ziyuheng asked worriedly. Probably not. These few snowfalls are not heavy, and compared with previous years, I am not worried about things like cattle and sheep. What I am worried about is people. Mu Yangling sighed. They have been there for 3 or 4 years. We don't grow grain anymore. We used to rely on selling sheep to buy grain. Now that the kingdom of Jin has withdrawn, almost every family in Han's Hong has sheep, and without the market of kingdom of Jin, they can only starve. Although meat can replenish physical strength, how much meat can one always eat? That's why Mu Yangling directly went to the local landlord to buy sheep without saving the effort, but ran away to the countryside to collect them one by one. She hoped that she could help ordinary people as much as she could. The local landlords were also ordered to raise sheep, but their requirements were much relaxed, and at least part of the land could be left for farming, enough for themselves and their families to consume, and they also raised a lot of sheep, which Mu Yangling wanted. Not many, every time you just need to find a landlord to buy enough sheep, but now the supply exceeds demand, and the price is easy to negotiate. But although those landlords were in trouble, it was not at the critical point of life and death, and these common people were afraid that they would starve to death if they couldn't sell them. Mu Yangling was wondering if he should suggest to Qi Heiran that the government office should take the lead in selling these sheep to the south and east. However, Mu Yangling could only suppress this thought when he thought that generals could not interfere in local government affairs. The two found the village. Last time, the herdsman was sweeping snow in a patched cotton coat. He was stunned when he saw Mu Yangling, and then he was overjoyed. He dropped the broom and ran over. Miss Mu, why are you here? Mu Yangling said with a smile, come to discuss business with you. How about it? Are you sad in winter? It's okay, I can survive. Speaking of which, thanks to the girl who took our sheep, the family has money to buy food. Otherwise, we would have to go up the mountain to peel the bark like other villages. Mu Yangling's smile froze, and he asked, bark? Have you eaten bark now? Aren't there still sheep? Ziyuheng asked with wide-eyed eyes. The herdsman smiled bitterly and said, although the sheep can't be sold now, who can afford it? They all want to wait until the spring to see if they can be sold. It will take 7 months before the first crop of grain can be harvested in the spring. In 7 or 8 months, you can't go to the mountains to dig grassroots, right? Unless the children in the family can't survive, only a few families will slaughter a sheep together, and the next time it's the turn of the next family to produce sheep, so each family should produce a sheep. Can survive until the beginning of spring. Ziyuheng also felt uncomfortable for a while. She also lived a hard life. When she cried, she was taken by her grandma to go up the mountain to peel off the bark, but this kind of life would not last long. Bran rice porridge was eaten for her and her younger sister, and after arriving at Mu's house, she was never hungry. Seeing that the two sisters were silent, The herdsman quickly changed the topic with a smile and asked, "Does the girl still want to buy sheep?" Mu Yangling nodded, "You are familiar with these places, so I want you to take me to a few nearby villages." "Miss Mu, we still have sheep in our village." Mu Yangling knew that he was talking about the leftovers she picked last time, so Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I know, but I only choose the ones that are big enough and energetic. If they don't meet my requirements, I won't take them. I'm running out of time, go and ask someone to bring the sheep out." The herdsman responded happily and ran to beat gongs and drums. Mu Yangling didn't choose many sheep in this village because she wanted to give up places to those more difficult families. After all, she had just made a deal with them not long ago, and the money they earned was enough for them to survive the next year autumn. But Mu Yangling still chose 12 good sheep, and said to the herders, "The purchase price for you is 2 taels of silver, regardless of size." The villagers thought that the price had increased only half a month later. "You must know that the sheep in Hanshong Mansion have dropped to 1 tael and 1 silver, almost no money is made, and no one buys them at a loss." However, the herdsman who received Mu Yangling vaguely guessed that Mu Yangling was pity for their situation, so he hurriedly winked at his parents and stopped a few relatives who wanted to bargain. When Mu Yangling turned around to touch the sheep, he whispered his guess to them. In order to enhance his credibility, he said, "Didn't you see her cousin looking at her in surprise just now? This is the temporary price increase, is not the price they negotiated before. Don't be confused, make her angry, she doesn't want it, and turns around to go to other villages. Someone sent her to the door." Everyone thought about it, and they became very respectful to Mu Yangling. Ziyuheng was also talking about this matter. "Didn't you say to give it at the same price as last time?" Mu Yangling smiled wryly, "Didn't you see how miserable their life is? I feel a little uneasy about earning their money. I'd better give it 2 taels. The sheep they sold in previous years were also sold at this price." "Then what's the price for Uncle Chin and the others?" $2 to $5, Mu Yangling said. "It takes 5 days to walk from Hanshong Mansion to Xinyuan Mansion, and 3 days of them have to sleep outside. The weather like this can kill half your life, plus the traffic on the way risk. You can't just let them earn some hard money, right? If there is no high profit, they are not willing to suffer this." Mu Yangling also has a certain estimate of the market for mutton in Xinyuan Mansion. They buy from her in 2s and 5s, and sell them in Xinyuan Mansion in 4s and 5s. They can only earn 2 or 2s each, which is a large amount. It's very objective. Ziyuheng understood immediately, cousin wants to do long-term business. Mu Yangling nodded, "I said that I want to build a cattle farm. There is no suitable place in Xinzhou Prefecture, but there is one in Hanshong Prefecture. In this way, they and I can be regarded as half fellow villagers. Even if it is to do something good for the villagers' bar." Ziyuheng pursed her lips and smiled, "You just do it, why do you have to find such an excuse? Anyway, no matter what you do, I will follow." Mu Yangling nodded her forehead, and said with a low laugh, "You can take care of my aunt's place. It's almost Chinese New Year and you are still running outside. My aunt will definitely be upset." Ziyuheng pouted, "I knew I had nothing good to do." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 295. Mu Yangling gave the herdsman 5 taels of silver, and he took them around the villages, and his family wanted to help them keep an eye on the sheep they bought. The herdsman couldn't ask for anything, so they didn't need Mu Yangling's instructions, and said directly to their family members, "I think Miss Mu wants to continue this business for a long time, you'd better not neglect her, or I won't be able to do this job next time." His family members were very proud and happy that he had won Mu Yangling's trust, so they patted their chests and promised that they would take good care of the sheep and feed them until they were white and fat. Then Mu Yangling officially started the acquisition journey with the mule and the cart it pulled. Mu Yangling asked the herdsman to take her to a relatively poor village. The herdsman said that except for some rich households and landlords, these 10 miles and 8 townships were all poor people. Before the Hu people came in, everyone lived a good life. Compared with Hanzhong Prefecture, which is located on a plain, the land is fairly fertile, which is many times stronger than that of Xinzhou Prefecture. Therefore, although the people there are poor, they live a good life. At least they don't need to eat bran when they are green and yellow, they only need to drink gruel can get through. But when the Hu people came in, the first thing they did was to rob them of their homes. At that time, the rich households and some landlords were also robbed, and because their land was being used for eye-catching, some landlords' homes were directly stolen by the rich and powerful of the kingdom of Jin. I was circled, and now I don't say it is a death, but the family is definitely broken. Ziyuheng hurriedly asked, what about the common people? Don't those barbarians occupy the common people's land? Why don't you take it? The herdsman sighed, don't care what it is, the common people are the ones who suffer the most and benefit the least. The two girls are still young, so maybe they didn't know Hanzhong Mansion 4 or 5 years ago. When the barbarians came in, burned, killed, and looted, how can that be described in a tragic word? In addition, the powerful later encircled the land and drove away the common people and villages on the ground. What happened to those people now? They all became refugees. Otherwise, they ran off to the mountains and became bandits, and there are only a few or two who can find relatives to take refuge in. So why did everyone keep quiet when the little general came in? And help secretly if you can? In the territory of Hanzhong Mansion, all Han people have enmity with those barbarians. Fortunately, life is slowly going on now. Well, next year the land will be plowed and cultivated, and we will be able to harvest grain again, the herdsman said here very happily. When General Qi came in at the time, he said that there will be no tax next year, and the official documents from the court 2 days ago have also come down. Next year we will give tax exemption to the people of Hanzhong Prefecture. Mu Yangling laughed forcefully, not daring to tell him that there might be a drought next year. Farmers have always been the weakest, but also the most tenacious. They are always the last to think of resistance, but they can always carry those disasters and move forward step by step in this difficult world. Mu Yangling is just a small person, all she can do is to help them as much as possible within her ability. While Mu Yangling was thinking, the herdsman pointed to the village in front of him and said, Miss Mu, we are here. My uncle's house is in this village. They don't have many sheep, but they are all good. This village is obviously more dilapidated than the herdsman's village. At this time, the adults are peeling bark on the mountain, while the women and children sleep on the kong covered with quilts, and the herdsman takes them directly to his uncle's house. But his aunt could only lie on the kong and talk to him, because life was so hard that they were reluctant to kill the sheep, so they could only pawn off the 3 sets of cotton padded clothes at home and keep one as a replacement. So she could only lie on the kong in summer clothes and cover herself with a quilt to talk to Mu Yangling and the others. But obviously, the 2 sets of patched cotton clothes did not get much money back, so they still have to go into the mountain to peel the bark every day. Mu Yangling was worried about whether those trees could survive the winter without their bark. Hearing that Mu Yangling came to collect the sheep, and he paid 2 taels of silver for one, his aunt couldn't bear to get up from the kong anymore, and she was going to open the fence for Mu Yangling to select the sheep. Mu Yangling hurriedly held her down and said, there's no rush right now. If you catch a cold when you get up, you'll have to spend money to take medicine. His aunt said anxiously, girl, I'm in good health, even if I roll around in the snow twice, I'm fine. Mu Yangling doesn't believe it. If he doesn't have enough food and clothes, how good is his health? She held down his aunt, and told the herdsman to go to the mountain to call his uncle back, and by the way, call back the villagers as well. The herdsman ran out immediately, and within 2/4 of an hour, there was a bang from the gate, and a group of elders ran in panting. They were a little disappointed to see Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng sitting in the main room. Half-grown children, or girls, how many sheep can they keep? Although Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng always dressed in a simple and neat way when they were outside, they combed their hair like a girl's head, coupled with their stature and appearance, everyone knew it was a girl at a glance. The reason why Mu Yangling doesn't dress up as a man is because the body doesn't have much restraint on women, and the second is because she wants people around her, even those she comes into contact with, to think that it's only natural for girls to go out and do errands. So far, it seems that the effect is not bad, although everyone still inevitably despises her when they see that she is a girl. Mu Yangling knew what they were thinking at a glance, and she didn't explain, and said directly, "Uncles, you came back from the mountain?" "Just right, I'm short on time, so let's make a long story short. I have to choose the whiskers I collected. No matter how big or small it is, it will be 2 taels of silver." The herdsman's uncle asked nervously, "How many do Miss Mu plan to take?" "Let's have a look first, we don't know yet." Mu Yangling didn't want to tell them the bottom line. Although his uncle was a little disappointed, he still warmly welcomed Mu Yangling to the fence of his house, and the villagers followed closely. The herdsmen were right. The sheep in this village were fed fatter than theirs. Maybe it was because of poverty and less quantity. Mu Yangling was also very happy. Seeing that his sheep were very energetic, he wanted them all. The 18 sheep cost a total of 36 taels of silver, and Mu Yangling paid him both money and goods on the spot. The herdsman's uncle obviously didn't expect to get so much money so quickly. Holding the money before he regained consciousness for a while, the other villagers got excited and surrounded Mu Yangling, trying to drag her into the fence of their own house. Mu Yangling shouted, "Where's your village chief?" An old man squeezed in hard, raised his hand and said, I am the village chief, I am the village chief." Mu Yangling pushed out the young and middle-aged men who squeezed in with one hand. Some of them moved more vigorously, and Mu Yangling directly lifted them up and threw them out of the encirclement. She mastered the strength, but she was still on the thick snow. She rolled twice on the snow and nothing happened, but she was frightened and sat on the snow in a daze. The crowd finally quieted down, and the village head, a bad old man, finally squeezed in. He looked at Mu Yangling panting, and said enthusiastically, "Ms Mu, don't mind, the children are all excited. It's the first time someone has come to the village to collect sheep, and it's so exciting. The Reborn Wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 296. Mu Yangling squeezed out of the crowd, pulled Ziyuheng behind, and frowned at the village chief. "Don't worry, everyone, as long as your sheep meet my standards, I will definitely want them, so that everyone doesn't have to be so nervous." Yes, don't worry, girl, I'll let them calm down now," the village chief roared from behind. Although everyone was still making noise, they stopped making loud noises, and the scene gradually quieted down. The village chief then said, "Okay, Miss Mu said, everyone will definitely receive it, you go back and pack it up, just wait at home, I will take Miss Mu to go right away." Mu Yangling saw that everyone was still unwilling to leave, so he said, "You should have fodder for the sheep at home, right? I bought your sheep, and how many sheep I bought, you have to prepare forage for them to eat for the next 5 days. This is not difficult for everyone, because before winter, everyone has prepared the forage that the sheep will eat for a winter, not to mention that it only takes 5 days to prepare. Even if Mu Yangling asks them to hand over all the forage, they will no comment." The herdsman's uncle immediately entered the house, took out the best bales of fodder, and helped Mu Yangling put them on the cart. Mu Yangling nodded slightly, and looked at the village chief. "Let's go now, who is the next family?" My home, third grandpa, my home is very close. My house is not far away. There are 23 sheep in my house, all fat and strong. Everyone crowded over again. The village chief yelled at them, "What's the rush? The next one is Lao Wangtu's house. No one is allowed to rob it. Let them all go to my house. If you don't leave, just follow me honestly. Don't make noise. If you quarrel people away, what will I do next? Pack you up." Only then did the crowd quiet down. Old Wangtu's family lived at the end of the village, which was a little far away, but Mu Yangling followed the village chief. Old Wangtu is a 58-year-old man with 2 grandchildren. The village had introduced the tragic life of Old Wangtu to Mu Yangling along the way. His son and daughter-in-law were killed by rebels when the barbarians entered the pass. So he had a hard life with his 2 children alone. Other people's houses still have a set of cotton coats for the winter, but he doesn't have one. The reason why he survives is that when the villagers go up the mountain to peel the bark, they will bring him a set, and the family will give some. The 3 of them, grandparents and grandchildren, have survived to this day. Although it is inconvenient for him to go out, his sheep are very energetic and fat, and Mu Yangling is very satisfied. He wants all the 11 Mu Yanglings in his family. The village head led Mu Yangling to start from the most difficult family, and put his own family at the end, but not every family of Mu Yangling will be ruined. The sheep she selected must be healthy and fat. The sheep need to be energetic, and among them, she struggled for a long time and finally only selected 7 sheep from the 23 sheep, which is considered the smallest proportion. The man in that family froze for a moment and was unhappy. "Miss Mu, why do you only charge me so little when it's my turn?" Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows. Did he take her kindness for granted? Mu Yangling directly reduced 2, and said to the unbelievable man, "You only have 5 here that meet the requirements, and I pity you for the extra 2. Since you are dissatisfied, then I will not accept them. These 5, do you want to sell it or not? If not, I will leave and go to the next one." The village head frowned and said, "Lao San Lai, look at what kind of sheep your family feeds. Isn't this a waste? Who in the village starves sheep like this like yours? It's not bad if Miss Mu accepts 5 of your sheep." The third Lai opened his mouth, turned around and kicked his wife on the waist, kicking her to the ground, and shouted, "You prodigal daughter, you have spoiled all the sheep in the house, kick on her." Ziyuheng was taken aback, and hid behind Mu Yangling in fright. Mu Yangling's expression darkened, and he kicked Lai Lao-san on the waist, kicking him out, and the villagers were startled. He stared blankly at Mu Yangling with a gloomy face. Mu Yangling looked at Lai Lao-san gloomily and said, "How is it? How does it feel to be kicked on the waist?" Lai Lao-san was always bullying and afraid of being tough, so he didn't even dare to meet Mu Yangling's eyes at this time. Mu Yangling snorted coldly, turned around and left. Lai Lao-san hurriedly shouted, "Miss Mu, you haven't paid the money yet." Mu Yangling sneered and said, "I won't accept your sheep." "Why?" Lai Lao-san shouted unconvinced. "I'm in a bad mood. I usually hate men who beat their wives and children, so I won't take any of your sheep." Mu Yangling pulled Ziyuheng and was about to leave. Lai San's daughter-in-law hurriedly hugged Mu Yangling's leg and cried, "Girl, please pity me. I have 2 children at home. His father is not sensible. Forgive him this time, take our sheep, don't you just look at 5? Then take 5. Mu Yangling tore off her finger, took 3 steps back, and said, "I won't accept it. Your man hits you. I hate such a man, so I just won't accept it." Saying that, she pulled Ziyuheng away. Lai San's daughter-in-law watched Mu Yangling go away, suddenly despaired, howled, and rushed to beat Lai San. Lai San was kicked hard by Mu Yangling, so he could only yell and dodge. The village chief opened his mouth next to Mu Yangling, but in the end he still didn't dare to intercede. As he gets older, he has gained a little more knowledge, and he also has some eyes for people. This one is the master who gets stronger when she encounters the strong. She may be hard to change her decision. He sighed and could only turn his head back for more. Help the Lysangia, let's get through this winter at least. Mu Yangling went to every household, and finally bought a total of 418 sheep. Counting the 12 received earlier, there are a total of 430 sheep, which cost a total of 860 yuan. 2. So there is not much money left from Mu Yangling. The cart was full of fodder, and Mu Yangling didn't stay long. He said goodbye to the village chief and the others after noon. They had better be able to reach the checkpoint before dark, otherwise they would be hard to see with so many sheep. The village chief wanted to keep Mu Yangling down for dinner, but Mu Yangling declined. In order to hurry, let's eat dry food in the car. Mu Yangling asked Ziyuheng to drive the mule cart behind, and she and the leading herdsman drove the sheep. After going to the shepherd's village and taking back the 12 sheep, Mu Yangling drove the flock directly into the city. There are 6 city gates in Hanzhong Mansion. Mu Yangling was lucky. He entered from the southeast city gate and walked for a quarter of an hour to the south city gate. The gate for Xingzhou Mansion to enter Hanzhong Mansion was set outside the south city gate. And the herdsman's village is not far from the southeast city gate. The officers and soldiers who set up checkpoints at the South City Gate saw Mu Yangling driving a flock of sheep over, and the people in the yamen were all smiles. Seeing this, they had no background. They were thinking about how many sheep they would have to leave this time to reward the brothers. Let's see the guard guarding the checkpoint on the opposite side to greet the little girl, hugging his fists and saluting, and even respectfully helping her herd the sheep. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 297. The gate guard just watched Mu Yangling drive a flock of sheep out of the city gate, and then handed over the paperwork to the guard for a pretentious check before passing the checkpoint. He twisted his neck stiffly and asked the colleagues around him, "Is that a relative of the guard's family? Do you want people to live?" The big merchants passing by have backgrounds. They can't afford to mess with them, so they can only eat and reward them. They usually search these hawkers. As a result, the hawkers disappeared immediately after the city gate was under martial law, and the medium-sized merchants also disappeared. For the most part, the income has plummeted, and I finally waited for one today. Is there still a background? The yamen servant felt that he had to find out. In their line of work, the profit could be reduced, but he could not offend people who should not be offended, so the yamen servant went to the guard for a drink when he was changing shifts at night. The ones who were sent to guard the gate were only battalion commanders of the 1st and 6th ranks. There were 2 of them, and they were replaced by day and night. Because they were the largest on this checkpoint and the city gate, they were called guards. The guard was also unambiguous, and told him directly that he was a good friend of their little general, and even the invalids division in front of the general would be courteous to him. The guard knows that this girl often goes in and out of the 5th battalion, and she is not stage frightened when she gets along with the young general, Mr. Fan. She fights and fights. Father is only 100 households now, but the future is definitely brighter than him. He had been a soldier for nearly 10 years before he joined the battalion commander, and Mu Shi had only been a soldier for a year before he got mixed up with 100 households. This is the speed of the wind. Mu Yangling didn't know what happened behind her. She drove the sheep to get out of the checkpoint, and Zhongwu and Qin Butcher Hua Butcher came up to meet her. Butcher Qin was taken aback when he saw the amount. It seems that their money can't buy so much, right? Let's find a place to rest first, and we'll talk later at night. Mu Yangling was so hungry that his chest was pressed against his back, and he didn't want to discuss business in this situation. Butcher Qin nodded and led them to the tent where they were camped. There is a large open space outside the checkpoint, which is now occupied by tents, horse-drawn carts, mule carts, donkey carts, and various vehicles. Because Mu Yangling and the others came a day earlier, they took a good position. Among a large group of goods such as silk, satin, tea, porcelain, spices, etc., Mu Yangling's goods were so extraordinary that everyone avoided her. Zhongwu lit a fire and began to get busy with dinner. Mu Yangling sat in front of the fire to warm up the fire. Then the butcher Qin had time to ask, "Miss Mu, there are too many sheep. You know, we don't have much money with us. I'm afraid I can't finish it." Mu Yangling's face was full of exhaustion. "I know, I didn't want to buy so much at first, but you don't know how difficult the life of farmers in Hanshong Mansion is now. Anyway, you also want to continue this business for a long time. On credit to you." Butcher Qin opened his mouth, wanting to say that they only plan to do it this time, and not for a long time, but seeing Mu Yangling's exhausted expression, he swallowed the words. He was the one who pulled people in, no matter what, responsible to the end. He gritted his teeth and said, "Since Miss Mu trusts me, I will definitely return the money to you. How do you calculate the price?" Mu Yangling sat up straight slightly, and said, "I buy goods from farmers on a whole basis, 2 taels of silver apiece, and now I sell them to you as a whole, just 2 taels of silver, and I earn $5 for each money. I don't care how you sell it in Xinyuan Mansion, but there is one thing, you have to give me back the money." Butcher Qin and Butcher Hua looked at each other in surprise. They didn't expect Mu Yangling's bid to be so low. Qin Butcher was so excited that he forgot his identity, and said, "Miss Mu, the price is too low. You are at a disadvantage." Butcher Hua tugged at his sleeve. "Now they seem to be the target of negotiation, right? Why stand there and talk?" Mu Yangling also smiled, and said, "We all know whether we have suffered or not. I walked to Xinyuan Mansion from here. I know that the road is difficult, and now that the road is blocked by heavy snow, it will only be more difficult. It is not easy to make money, and it is not easy for you to make money. In 2 days, each sheep can earn 5 renminbi, which is considered a huge profit for Mu Yangling. After all, she doesn't have to worry about sales, as long as she goes to buy and pull out the checkpoint and hand it over to Butcher Qin and the others. 430 sheep, worth 1,075 taels of silver, the Qin butcher and the others paid 775 taels of silver at one time, and still owed 300 taels of silver, which will be brought to Mu Yangling when they come again superior. Butcher Qin and Butcher Hua wrote and signed the paperwork, and Mu Yangling also signed his name and stamped his fingerprints, and the deal was considered a deal. This trip, Mu Yangling earned 210 taels of silver. After eating and drinking, Mu Yangling went into the tent to sleep in a happy mood. But Ziyuheng tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. Mu Yangling woke up in the middle of the night and asked, "What are you thinking? You have insomnia at such a young age. Cousin, why don't you accept the sheep of the third family today? I think his wife is very pitiful. Do you think she will be beaten later? I think their life is not easy." I glanced at their kitchen. Inside it's chopped bark mixed with a few grains of rice. You don't need to worry about it. All the sheep in their village have been sold except his family. They are all from the villagers. Wouldn't they lend money to their family? The third daughter-in-law of Lai is pitiful, but if I accept their family's sheep under such circumstances, she will only be more pitiful in the future. When Lai San sees whether he beats his wife or not, I will accept their sheep, and even more. In the future, he will use his wife to force others to soften their hearts to achieve his own purpose. But now he has paid the price for beating his wife. The sheep have not been sold. In order to survive, he will borrow foreign debts. The peasant's temper of guarding the city makes him dare not borrow too much, so he will probably still have to eat bark mixed with rice grains in the future. The porridge that was originally in good condition has become the worst in the village. This gap will make him afraid to hit his wife again. At least he will think more when he beats his wife next time. As for Lysan's daughter-in-law, did you see that when we left, did she scratch Lysan? She will be tougher in the future, Zhu Heng. The reason why I didn't buy his sheep is to force her to be tougher. Women, the only one you can rely on is yourself. Mu Yangling taught her in a low voice, for her mother's family, the daughter who married off splashed water, and the daughter who returned home is a guest. Although she was angry at her husband's family, her mother's family can support her, but this is only once in a while. Do you think the natal family can stand up for the married daughter in everything? Zhu Heng shook her head. In the husband's family, the son belongs to the family, the grandson belongs to the family, only the daughter-in-law has a foreign surname, and the only person who is not related by blood is the daughter-in-law. So I said that the only thing a woman can rely on is herself. Of course, the cousin is not trying to teach you to be indifferent. Ruthless, there are many examples of daughter-in-law completely integrating into her husband's family. My cousin just hopes that you will be more self-reliant and self-loving in the future. Zhu Heng opened her eyes and looked at the tent, but she was thinking about her cousin's words in her heart. When Mu Yangling thought she had fallen asleep, Zhu Heng suddenly said, "Cousin, I understand. Don't worry, I will definitely improve myself." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 298. The 23rd year of Jinjian was the year with the most disasters in the Great Zhou dynasty, and the history of later generations generally believes that the Great Zhou dynasty began to die at this time. At that time, Emperor Duanzong and his courtiers didn't think so. Although the rain has been less than in previous years since the beginning of spring, they felt that the Qin Tianjian had already made a prediction last year, so they were not worried. What should they do? What are you doing? Emperor Duanzong was still looking forward to the construction of the Tangshan Palace outside the city, so that he could move in this winter. Well, he could also escape the heat in the mountains in summer. Although the most important thing in Tangshan is warm soup, it is still very cool on the mountainside. If the emperor knew, because of this year, he would perish in less than 10 years. He would not force the Ministry of Households to give him money to build Tangshan Palace, but to use the money to strengthen the country. Armament, no, it should be used to help the people. In the autumn of Jinjian's 23rd year, there was a drought in the area of Lizhu Road, almost no rice was harvested, the highest yield of wheat was only 120 caddies, and the lowest yield was only 18 caddies, which was worthy of recovering grain seeds. Fortunately, with the corn seeds contributed by Qi Ziyuan, combined with the corn planting method he promoted, the highest yield per mu was 632 jin, and the lowest was 289 jin. A song. But Bila Prefecture was not as lucky as Lizhu Road. The area around Linan Prefecture was also dry, but the two lakes were flooded. Not only the farmland was submerged, but many houses were also destroyed and many people were displaced. The Miao people in southern Xinjiang are also ready to move, but all this is a small-scale disaster in the eyes of the court. In Linan Mansion, the court is holding a banquet. One is to celebrate the completion of the Tangshan Palace, and the emperor can move in to escape the cold in winter. The second is to celebrate the bumper corn harvest, yes, the bumper corn harvest. Of the corn seeds that the imperial court forced Qi Ziyuan to hand over, a quarter was handed over to the emperor, and the emperor handed it over to Huang Zhuang for sowing, and the remaining 3/4 were divided among ministers and aristocratic families. After a whole winter of wrangling, the seeds were carefully divided and planted in the ground by their tenants. According to the planting method submitted by Qi Ziyuan, they had just harvested autumn not long ago, and the yield per mu reached 740. 8 caddies, of course, is the highest yield, but it also proves from the side that Emperor Sejong's comments on corn were correct. Such a high yield, regardless of whether it is delicious or not, people will definitely not starve to death after it is promoted, so when they heard that there were rebellions by disaster victims in various places, they did not take this matter to heart. They are all a group of unscrupulous people, who have such high-yield things and even rebelled. At this time, they forgot that the corn seeds had not been dispersed enough, and all the corn seeds from the south were swallowed by them, and none of them flowed out. After hearing that there were also people rebelling on Lizhu Road, the Emperor Dezhou ordered Qi Ziyuan to lead his troops to vindicate them with a wave of his hand. When Qi Ziyuan received the official document, he almost gritted his teeth, slapped the official document on the table, and said angrily, "Isn't anyone trying to persuade you to make peace?" Qi Heiran was also very angry. When it was time to make peace, those ministers would not fart, but when they did not change to make peace, they insisted on negotiating peace with the barbarians. "Brother, I went to check. They are all farmers in the Tongchuan area. They all attacked the county government when they couldn't survive. They didn't kill anyone. They just opened up the granary of the government." Qi Heiran grinding his teeth, he said, "I heard that the people in the Tongchuan area have reached the point where they have to change their sons to eat, but the county government and the government just don't open granaries." Qi Ziyuan raised his forehead with a headache. "You can't blame Tongchuan's magistrate for this matter. He wrote letters to the court every 3 days. The court only told him to stick to it, but he didn't let go and opened a warehouse to help the disaster. The emperor thought it was the same as before. Woolen cloth." Qi Ziyuan looked at Rongxian, and said, "Military master, you draft a document, and I will hand it over later, and explain the situation here clearly. Those are farmers who cultivate the land, and the main thing is to negotiate a peace." Rongxian responded. "But since the emperor asked us to rehabilitate, we can't do nothing. At least the situation in Tongchuan Mansion must be under control. Heiran, you immediately lead the troops to Tongchuan Mansion, and take the 5th Battalion and the 4th Battalion with you. Mu Shi is the striker, and will set off tomorrow." Qi Heiran replied wearily. "What's the matter?" Qi Ziyuan looked at him strangely and asked, "Don't you usually jump up excitedly when you hear about the war? Why are you so depressed now?" Rongxian laughed and said, "General, forgot. The day after tomorrow is Miss Mu's birthday, and the little general also said that he would hold a birthday party for Miss Mu in Hanshong Mansion." Qi Ziyuan laughed loudly, patted him on the shoulder and said, "I thought it was something. Don't worry, you're not at home, I'll ask Zijin to help you with it, and elder brother will help you supervise. It's not because of this that he's depressed, okay? He prepared for a month just to prepare a birthday present for Mu Yangling, but now it's all gone." Qi Heiran left wearily. Rongxian watched him leave, turned his head to look at the smiling Qi Ziyuan and said, "Chint, Heiran is getting more and more interested in Miss Mu." Qi Ziyuan shook his head and laughed, "I didn't expect this kid to find his wife first." Rongxian looked at him in surprise. "You really don't mind? The Mu family's family background is not very good." Qi Ziyuan's face was slightly cold, and he said, "I hate the view of family status the most in my life. Has his mother, he and his brother been harmed by this family all their lives? What kind of family background does the Qi family have? 5 generations ago, they were just illiterate farmers, and only one scholar was born in the 3rd generation. He is only the son of a 5th-rank official, and he has a family background. Wish you the best of luck. Where is home again?" Rongxian stopped talking immediately. He knew that the enmity between the Qi family and the Zhu family was a bloody debt, and no one can tell who is right and who is wrong, but for Qi Ziyuan and Qi Heiran, it is indeed Qi Feng. Ashamed of them. Qi Ziyuan calmed down, and said, "Haoran has a big temper and rarely listens to persuasion. Mu Yangling is the only one who can control him besides me and Zijin. He likes him himself. We don't need to stop him. We just wait for them when I get older, I'll talk to Mujia again. Thinking of Xu Wanyang's behavior, Qi Ziyuan felt relieved, and said, maybe the Mu family also has a family background, as long as they don't look down on our family's Heiran. Rong Xian rolled his eyes, knowing that he was joking, and seeing him laughing happily, he said sinisterly, Chint, you are 20 years old this year, right? You are also 21 years old, should you get married? Qi Ziyuan was taken aback. Rong Xian originally said this to stop him, but after he said it, he thought about it seriously and said in shock, yes, his good brother and good friend are all 21, and they haven't even gotten married yet. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 299. Qi Heiran was a little frustrated, because Xu Wanyang said that Mu Yang hadn't had a decent birthday at such an age, and wanted to give her a decent birthday gift when she was 12 years old. Qi Heiran volunteered to take over this important task. It was planned to be done in the Qi mansion of Hanshong Mansion. He invited a few people he knew well to come and play together. The most important thing was to let Mu Shi spare time to attend his daughter's birthday present. Qi Heiran even prepared a big gift for her, but now because he is going to rehabilitate Tong Chuan, it is impossible for him to participate. Frustrated, he went to Mu Yangling and told her the bad news. Mu Yangling's mind was not on this. She heard that Qi Heiran became the first general to lead an army to be rehabilitated. Her first thought was that Qi Heiran was going to be recorded in the annals of history, the kind that was scolded by later generations. Feudal rulers suppress peasant uprisings. The second thought is, if Qi Heiran kills the common people, will it harm his virtue? So, Mu Yangling persuaded him sternly, probably meaning that rehabilitating is rehabilitating, but those are poor people, and they can be let go as soon as they can. The key is not to kill the old, weak, women and children. Qi Heiran rolled his eyes and said, is the Lord such a cruel person? He said with a dark face, but if they also participated in the rebellion, killing people and stealing goods, I will definitely not let them go. They are just ordinary people, how could they kill and rob? How is it impossible? Qi Heiran was very unhappy with Mu Yangling's arbitrariness, and said, many wealthy households in Tongchuan were robbed, and many families were killed, and several of them had a good reputation in the countryside, and usually do good deeds. What Qi Heiran didn't tell Mu Yangling was that almost none of the men from those families survived, and all the women's family members were ruined, and all of them committed suicide. If Qi Heiran was somewhat resistant to rehabilitating at the beginning, then now he wants to hurry up and rush to Tongchuan. Mu Yangling couldn't refute for a while, and said after a while, there are good people and bad people everywhere, and there are naturally scum among farmers, but you can't deny that there are also many good people among them. Will good people rebel? When pushed to the extreme, even a saint can't help but want to rebel. Heiran, watching his relatives starve to death one by one in front of him, unless he is a ruthless and cold-blooded person, no matter how generous his heart is, he will be ground into hatred. Meaning. Qi Heiran was silent, thinking that there were more or less people rebelling everywhere. He also became a little dazed for a while. Mu Yangling patted him on the shoulder and said, as long as you have a clear heart, Heiran, when you go to rehabilitate, you only need to kill the leader and the evildoers. If no one encourages them, they will disperse. Now, those old and weak women and children will let them live. Qi Heiran complied, but when he arrived in Tongchuan, he realized that the situation was more complicated than he imagined, and the rebellion was not all in one group. The rebel team in Tongchuan is roughly divided into 3 factions. The first faction has the largest number of people, reaching more than 40,000 people. Qi Heiran, who only brought 20,000 people over, was a little nervous at first, but when he heard about their composition, Qi Heiran instantly relieved. Of the more than 40,000 rebels, only 10,000 are young and middle-aged, and the remaining 30,000 are all old and weak women and children. The younger ones are 3 or 4 years old, and the older ones are in their 60s. Rush in and grab it and leave, never leave a grain of rice, but only hurt people and not kill. According to the survey statistics, in their many operations, the most seriously injured person from the imperial court was a broken leg. Chi Heiran didn't even ask about the specific situation, and the scouts who came to report told him what happened vividly. This group of people felt like magic soldiers, as if they had fallen from the sky, and the imperial army had never been able to figure out their whereabouts. When they sent troops to guard the grain depot in this county, they bypassed several counties and headed directly towards the Iwentua county, and when the imperial army and yamen servants rushed over again, no one was there. Only more than 100 defenders in the grain depot were bound and thrown in the grain depot. The one who was injured the most was because he had been tied up for a long time. When he stood up, he fell and accidentally broke a bone. Little general, do you think they are like divine help? Now they have robbed 3 granaries, but the prefect of Tongchuan has not even found their shadow, the scout said excitedly. Chi Heiran glared at him, and said, "What's so difficult about this? Tongchuan has countless fork roads, plus the jungle is densely covered. There are so many old people among the 40,000 people. I don't know how many passages the court doesn't know. As for those people in the yamen," Chi Heiran gritted his teeth and said, "their actions don't shy away from others. I'm afraid people will know which grain depot they are guarding after a little inquiry. But what I admire is that the leader can control 40,000 people." When he rushed into the grain depot, no one was hurt, and there was no looting when the grain was moved. The old, the weak, the sick and the disabled, the young and middle-aged, women and children, such a mixed group are most likely to have conflicts and casualties, and the leader can control it. Since this faction had never killed anyone, Chi Heiran didn't want to kill them. He decided to deal with the other 2 factions first. The other 2 factions are almost entirely composed of young and middle-aged people. One is what Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling said, robbing wealthy households and killing them all. 8 years old, with a total of more than 2,400 people, this person not only robbed wealthy households, but also the villages he passed by, and some villages were even massacred. Not as good as him. So Chi Heiran's first target was him. He would not let anyone who participated in murder and rape be spared. The third faction is much more normal, a typical rebellion. The leader is Zhang Zhong, a native of Tongchuan Jianzhu, almost the first faction. As soon as the first faction robbed the county government and the granary, he took 400 people to pick up the bargain in the back, directly occupied the county seat, and then took the original government servants incorporated with the young and strong in the city, gathered 1,700 people, and occupied another county before the court recovered. His characteristic is to attack the city. This kid has a talent for rebellion. Opened the spare small granary of the county government, and then appeased the people, and forced the rich households in the county to reward his army with food, grass, and silver. Randomly killed people. According to the estimate of the damage, Chi Heiran put this faction in the second place to deal with it, and planned to take back the county government that Zhang Zhong had occupied after Fenyu was dealt with. But the magistrate doesn't think so. He thinks that Zhang Zhong is the most harmful, followed by the 40,000 people who can't see the end of the dragon, and finally Fenyu. Chi Heiran was never the one who succumbed to civil officials, so he told him directly that he was fighting this battle, so he had to listen to him. The prefect of Tongchuan was choked, pointing at Chi Heiran. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 300. Fenyu's whereabouts are not difficult to ascertain. Chi Heiran ordered 2,000 soldiers and horses, and then asked Mu Shi to lead 5,000 people to surround Jianzhu. That was Zhang Zhong's headquarters. His main force was there. Thousands of people were led by General Liu of the 4th Battalion to stay in Tongchuan Mansion, and was responsible for logistics and braking. General Lu Shen felt that Qi Heiran should sit in command of the Chinese army instead of rushing to the front. General Lu Shen was not good at attacking and fighting, and Mu Shi had to defend Zhangzhou. Naturally, he had to attack Fenyu by himself, and he was young. Although he had the fortified battle of Hanshong Mansion ahead, except for the 5th Battalion, he was in front of the other 4 battalions. It is still difficult to convince the crowd. General Lu can stay behind is more convincing than him staying behind, wait for him to get rid of Fenyu, and then slowly gather the army's morale. After Qi Heiran finished deploying his defenses, he immediately asked people to cook food, and they would set off before dawn tomorrow. Here, Fenyu just heard that the imperial court was going to send a large army to suppress them. At this time, they had just occupied a town and robbed the rich households and ordinary people in the town. Some people went to find out when the imperial army would arrive. Fenyu didn't expect the speed of the army to be so fast. He felt that he had just heard the news that they would come to Tongchuan Mansion in 4 or 5 days, and then look for their whereabouts. 3 or 4 days later, it was time to send troops come to suppress them. No matter what, it will be 10 days later. He had had enough rest in 10 days, and when he had grabbed enough things, he would take his brothers up the mountain. There are many mountains and forests in Tongchuan Prefecture. As long as he enters the mountain, let alone a large army, even General Yuan can't help it. The vast mountains, no one can be found, and all of them are dangerous terrain that is easy to defend and difficult to attack. According to Fenyu's guess, this battle is probably nothing. So he leisurely asked someone to go out to find out when the imperial army would arrive. Because of Fenyu's many crimes, all the people in Tongchuan Mansion who could leave fled, so the people sent out hadn't heard the news for a while, but Qi Heiran had already gone straight to the town where they were stationed. Qi Heiran is a regular soldier. Qi Ziyuan has always been very strict with him. His homework is in charge of by 3 teachers. One is a teacher like Fan Zijin. As long as he has roughly read the 4 books and 5 classics, Qi Ziyuan does not require him to be proficient. However, he must memorize military books such as Wu Zi, Sun Bin's Art of War and Huang Shigong's 3 strategies backwards. Qi Ziyuan and Rong Xian took the time to explain these military strategies to him, and there is room for practice, which is different from big characters. Knowing one, Fenyu, who has never fought against a regular army, is more than 1 level higher than Fenyu. Therefore, the people Fenyu sent out to inquire about the news were arrested by Qi Heiran's advance scouts after walking out for a long time, and they were escorted back to Qi Heiran. Take down the rebels, and we will also go to the town to rest. Little General, the soldiers marched for a day in a hurry. I'm afraid they won't be able to catch up. Someone dissuaded them. Qi Heiran gave him a cold look, and the person who proposed immediately lowered his head. Qi Heiran order the soldiers to speed up their pace, and they must go outside the town before the sun sets. Now, no one dared to object, and they all quickened their pace. 2,000 people were stationed in the woods outside the town, but Fenyu's people did not notice. Qi Heiran went to see the 2 people who had been caught, and asked them about their situation again. After making sure that he had made no omissions, he let the soldiers rest. They were not allowed to light fires, and they could only eat the dry food they had on their bodies. After eating, only the 2 teams were allowed to patrol and let the wind out on the commanding heights, and the rest of them immediately took the time to rest. Fei Bai stayed beside Qi Heiran, a little nervous. Master, are we really going to do it tonight? Wouldn't it be better to save it until tomorrow? The soldiers' spirits are also better. Qi Heiran glared at him, and reprimanded in a low voice, Bai followed me to listen to so many classes. There is no better opportunity than tonight. By tomorrow morning, our people may be timid, and the risk of being discovered is too high. It will increase. This is the best time. You will stay with the master for a while, just don't get your head cut off. Qi Heiran hugged the sword and leaned against the tree to sleep with his eyes closed. He suddenly opened his eyes, glanced at the moon in the sky, and then slapped Fei awake, telling him to wake up the soldiers. Chi Heiran's army was divided into 3 groups, 500 people guarded the exit of the town, and another 500 people bypassed the town to guard the town entrance in the south, and he led 1,000 people into the town. Chi Heiran said, "Don't let anyone escape, shoot more arrows, if there are too many people, use the tactics of suspicious soldiers, and wait for us to come out to rescue. Little general, they have more than 2,000 people, you only bring 1,000. Chi Heiran snorted coldly and said, "Our officers and men are all well trained. That guy Feng Yu only fought against a few government servants, and he had already developed Yelang's arrogant temperament, and the spies who caught him reported that they were not stationed in the together." Another reason why Chi Heiran looks down on Feng Yu is that this man never sets up defenses, at most he asks people to patrol the place where they live. He believes that after 2 years of his training, soldiers who can fight against barbarians will lose to these soldiers. A motley crew who have not held a sword for more than a month. So Chi Heiran boldly led 1,000 people to approach the town quietly, and all the people sent by Feng Yu to patrol were killed by Chi Heiran's men. Feng Yu robbed the houses of 2 members outside the town, and they lived there directly. Because there are too many people and few rooms, there are still people sleeping directly in the yard with mats and quilts, defenseless. Chi Heiran walked into the pried open door, saw the person on the ground, twitched the corner of his mouth, waved to call the scout team captain, and said in a low voice, "Go to Feng Yu immediately, arrest him, and gag him, after success send us a letter." He also asked Azaoki to lead his people to guard the exits. In this way, the 2 mansions were completely surrounded, and there were also voices of laughter, crying and cursing from some rooms. After listening to it for a while, Chi Heiran became very angry. Upset, he said to Fei with a cold face, "Take 2 small flags and go to those rooms that are still noisy, tie up everyone, if you can't tie them up, kill them, and rescue them." Fei knew that the little general hated this kind of thing the most, so he immediately responded in a low voice and led the people there. The people in the yard obviously deserved this kind of noisy environment, because even Chi Heiran couldn't stand the screams coming from the room, and the people on the ground could still sleep soundly, but occasionally someone would shut their eyes. He squinted and cursed a few times. Chi Heiran and the others walked around without even noticing. Chi Heiran reckoned that the time was almost up, and seeing the noise gradually disappearing, he waved his hand to let the soldiers behind him quietly start tying people up from a corner. They were also shameless, one of them covered their mouths, one suppressed the other's hands and feet, and the other tied the hands and feet with a sweat towel, and then took off the other's stinky socks to cover their mouths. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 301. Finally, the noise in the room disappeared completely, and those who hadn't died of sleep felt that something was wrong, but when they opened their eyes, they saw the sharp edge of a spear. They turned their heads stiffly, and saw the courtyard surrounded by the Imperial army. At the same time, a firework exploded from one direction in the backyard. A resident of the small town glanced outside and cursed inwardly, "It's so ugly that the fireworks are set on fire." They gritted their teeth with hatred for Feng Yu. The 2 general flags ambushing on both sides of the town's exit have not seen anyone escape. Seeing that the sky is almost dawn, there is still no movement at all, the 2 general flags gradually become anxious, and are planning to rush to help. A horse galloped out from here. Ling the little general will immediately lead people into the town under the general flag of Ling Fang, and set up defenses at the entrance of Bijin, so that no one else can come in and out. Fang Zongqi confirmed that it was the messenger who came, and immediately jumped out of the hiding place, and asked anxiously, "What happened in the town? Why didn't you hear anything?" The messenger grinned, The little general has already arrested everyone, but dozens of people ran out to harm the people. The little general spent some time looking for them and checking the number of people. Now the roster has been counted. Nothing slipped through the net. Hizanki, who was guarding Nanzenkao, also received such an order, and both of them were shocked. They didn't hear any movement from the town, so it's over? Chi Heiran stood in front of Feng Yu, looked at him who was unruly, suddenly sneered, and kicked him away. Seeing him spit out a mouthful of blood, he was relieved a little. Fei Bai, ask someone to send those girls away, and secretly send them out through the back door, and give them some of the property Feng Yu collected. Fei Bai responded. Chi Heiran looked at Feng Yu coldly, and said, as for him, keep your breath and don't kill him. Feng Yu looked at Chi Heiran, who turned around and left, and then he became a little flustered. He was not afraid of Chi Heiran beating him and scolding him, because as long as he communicated with him and had a vent, he might persuade him to let him go, or escape, or to defend himself. But Chi Heiran didn't ask him a word when he saw him. He kicked him directly, and now he just left, which seemed to mean that he didn't intend to interrogate him. Seeing that Chi Heiran was about to disappear from his sight, Feng Yu hurriedly asked, don't you want to know where my treasure is hidden? Chi Heiran didn't stop, and left directly. Fei Bai sneered, and said, what's so difficult about this? Can you still hide those treasures by yourself? Just ask one of your men and you'll know. Feng Yu's face turned pale. Although he had reduced the number of people who knew it as much as possible, it was impossible for him to pull away so many things by himself, so there were quite a few people who knew it. And did those people tell others that he still had? I really don't know. The residents of the small town did not expect that the world would change in just one night. The residents who lived under the horror immediately cried out, and those whose family members died at the hands of the rebels even wanted to rush in front of them and beat them up. But when he rushed to the front, he was discouraged again when he saw the heavily guarded officers and soldiers. And the two squires who were driven away came back with tears in their faces to thank Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran said with a cold face, your mansion has been expropriated temporarily, and it will be returned to you when we leave. The two squires were stunned for a moment, and then smiled obsequiously. The general can stay as long as he wants, we must be fine, it's just something in the mansion. All the things that the rebels robbed are placed in your mansion, so you should make a list of the things in your mansion, and I will take away the things that don't belong to you later. The residents of the town also lost a lot. Chi Heiran obviously didn't want to give up halfway, so he planned to distribute the things, at least not to make it cheaper for the two squires, right? It is already a big surprise to get back my own things, so the two country gentlemen are grateful to Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran is waiting here to wait for the magistrate of the county. He wants to march and fight, so it is naturally impossible to take these prisoners with him, and the prison in the Yamen cannot hold more than 2,000 people. Even if it can fit, the county magistrate is still afraid of them. What about the prison escape and rebellion, and where can he find food for more than 2,000 people? Therefore, Chi Heiran decided to execute these rebels on the spot. Of course, it is impossible to kill every one of them, but as long as they have a life on their hands or have raped a woman, they will be executed on the spot, and the executioners will be temporarily executed by Chi Heiran's soldiers. He won't stay here any longer, so he wants to kill the person who should be killed within 2 days. At this time, Chi Heiran felt that it would not be good to take down the entire rebel army silently, which would increase the workload. If the two armies had fought at the beginning, they might have consumed most of the opponent's number directly, but this would undoubtedly put his soldiers at risk and harm the residents of the town. Chi Heiran thought he was still a good young man with integrity and kindness, so this idea just flashed by. Before the county magistrate arrived here, Chi Heiran had already started a thorough investigation. By the time the county magistrate arrived, Chi Heiran had pulled out 639 people. Pass girl. This number seems a bit large, but it is not a large proportion in the team of more than 2,400. Chi Heiran found out after checking that 1,000 people joined the team in the past few days, and they have not had time to do evil. There are also some people who are obviously not courageous or have no conscience, so they only rush forward to scare people, but they have never killed anyone. Chi Heiran was also worried now. What about the remaining 1,800 people? Fei Bai came up with a bad idea. Master, why don't we take them all away? Those who followed Feng Yu are all young and middle-aged, and there is no one at home. Taking them back can at least form a battalion. Although Chi Heiran was also moved, he said, how many people do we have? What if we bring them back? Chi Heiran rolled his eyes and said, but we can let one person try. Who? Chi Heiran grinned, the leader of the 40,000 people we couldn't find no matter how hard we searched. That person can seduce 40,000 people, and there are many old people among the 40,000 people, so it shouldn't be difficult to seduce these young and middle-aged people. Fei Bai was dumbfounded. Master, where are we going to find them? And what about these people now? Chi Heiran chuckled, and said, my lord was worried that the infantry would attack Jianzhou too slowly, but now it seems that the army can be stationed here. The remaining 1,800 people will be guarded first, and their mines will be destroyed first. Then it will be under control. 2,000 people look at 1,800 people? Didn't you object before? Chi Heiran couldn't help but patted him on the head, and said, my objection was that it was impossible for 2,000 people to escort 1,800 people on the road. Now that we have their life and death in their hands, can't we even look down on individuals? At most in 5 days, the Lord will be able to find that person. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 302. Chi Heiran beheaded Feng Yu, and went straight to Jianzhou with 20 people, and at the same time sent a letter to General Lu to send another 2,000 people to the town. Although it has been leaked that those people will not be killed, and they have been brainwashed mentally, some people can't help but want to escape if they don't keep them together. As long as one of these things escapes, it can't be stopped later. Therefore, Chi Heiran still made some preparations for this. Mu Shi has already led people to surround Jianzhou and Zhangzhou in the county. The rebels who wanted to come back were held back by the garrison of Tongchuan Mansion. Zhangzhou in the county looked sullenly at the army that had been surrounding the city without moving, and said, we can't wait any longer, we will break through tonight, otherwise even if they don't attack the city, we will be surrounded to death. At this time, Chi Heiran, who had just rushed to the camp, also said, you will do it tonight. You have surrounded him for 3 days, and you have reached his limit. You can't make him jump over the wall, or the people in the city may not be able to survive. Although Zhang Zhong has always been courteous and kind to the common people, but when he is cornered, he may be able to threaten Chi Heiran with the common people. Chi Heiran was sure that he would not compromise, but it would be better if fewer people died. When will you do it? See, when they break through, let them out, and ambush on the road. But Jianzhou has a total of 4 city gates, and we only have 2,000 soldiers and horses. If we disperse, we may not be able to stop people. Chi Heiran looked at the map and muttered, there are high mountains and dense forests in the east, but the road is impassable, and there is only one main road for him to escape to the south. The most important thing is that not far to the south is Zitong, which is still under the control of the imperial court. I just escaped from here, so I won't provoke Zitong. In the west, you can go to Xinyuan Mansion in the north, go down to Mao County in the south, and go to Li County in the west. There are even dense jungles there, so it is convenient for Tibetans. With Zhang Zhong's traditional fighting methods, he will definitely bring most of the people with him. Go out from the west city gate, and the rest of the people will break out from the north city gate to attract our attention. So I will take 1,000 people to the west city gate, and you will take 800 people to stay at the north city gate, and the other 200 people will disperse, come and go to the south gate and the east gate. Let them create the illusion of crowds, and only surround but not attack. Little general, isn't it too little for you to bring only 1,000 people? If you do mental calculations but don't care, what's more, Zhang Zhong's soldiers are also improvised, but they have not been trained. Such people are usually cannon fodder on the battlefield. If anyone can go to the battlefield, they will not bother to recruit soldiers. Trained. Little general, it's better not to underestimate the enemy. She felt that Chi Heiran was a bit exaggerated. After all, the opponent had fought several battles and had seen blood. Chi Heiran nodded. Don't worry, I know what's in my heart. Although he is proud, he will not be arrogant, and he naturally knows that when fighting a war, he must be bold and cautious. Zhang Zhong led people to open and guard the west gate, and when he heard the shouts of killing from the north gate, he knew that the people he arranged had rushed out to fight the imperial army. He ordered people to open the west city gate. The officers and soldiers stationed outside obviously didn't expect someone to rush out at this time, so they were stunned for a moment, and Zhang Zhong shouted, "Rush out!" The rebel army rushed towards the officers and soldiers. The army obviously didn't pay attention to the west gate, and only sent 100 or 200 people to guard the west gate. When those people saw their menacing approach, they just resisted symbolically and fled in all directions. The rebels didn't chase after him, but followed Zhang Zhong directly. Zhang Zhong ran for 3 miles with his people, and then he gradually felt that something was wrong. The west gate is the second most important place after the north gate. How could they rush out so easily? Stop! Zhang Zhong waved his hand to restrain the team, looked at both sides of the road in surprise, suddenly felt that the road was unusually quiet, his face changed suddenly, and shouted, "Back! Back up!" But he had already eaten. Arrows rained from the forest on both sides, and huge rocks even rolled down from the mountain on the left. When Zhang Zhong retreated, he found that the officers and soldiers who had fled before had surrounded him again, and the number was not 100 or 200 as before. Come on, he fell into someone's trap early in the morning. Zhang Zhong could only draw out his sword and shouted, "Brothers, we will fight them." But he didn't dare to fight the imperial army to the end, so when it was almost dawn, he saw that there were only 300 or 400 remnants on his side, but they couldn't break through the defense line, so he had to put down his sword and surrender. Chi Heiran escorted the people down, and then began to lead people to clean the battlefield and count the casualties. When everything was done, Mu Shi also sent a letter. Dozens of people escaped, but most of them were caught. Chi Heiran nodded, escorted him back to Tongchuan Mansion, and he directly threw him to General Lu to deal with. Unlike Feng Yu, Chi Heiran can kill a scum like Feng Yu directly and refuse to report to the court, but an anti-army leader like Zhang Zhong has to be escorted to Beijing, and the emperor decides. Chi Heiran took out the map and asked, "The 40,000 people are still missing?" "Yes," Lu Shen frowned, "it's like seeing a ghost. There's no news about anyone, and it's not 40 or 50 people. This is 40,000 people. How could there be no trace?" Chi Heiran frowned, "Is there any fortification nearby that can hide so many people? For example, the lair of the exterminated bandits on the mountain." General Lu felt that Chi Heiran was thinking too much. When the imperial court suppressed the bandits, they would destroy the bandit dens when they finally left. Otherwise, wouldn't it be convenient for those who came after? Chi Heiran scratched his head. Among the 40,000 of them, there are old and young. It is impossible for them to stay outside. There must be a place to stay. This place is so big, it is impossible to find it. Ask the prefect of Tongchuan. I've asked, but he didn't know anything about it. General Lu Shen was also a little annoyed. If it wasn't for the black gauze hat on his head, I would suspect that he hid him. After all, how could 40,000 people leave no trace? I didn't care about it before, because General Lu thought they were careless and didn't investigate carefully, but hell, he sent the most powerful scouts, but still didn't find any traces. Chi-Heiran narrowed his eyes and asked, where did they first appear? General Lu gave Chi-Heiran a strange look, shouldn't he ask for the last time? But he still pointed to a point on the map and said, here, Zayahua. Chi-Heiran ordered, you send someone to bring back all the captives in the small town, and I will take someone to inquire about it. When Chi-Heiran reappeared for the last time, he was wearing a suit that was exchanged for 2 taels of silver and a beggar in the city, so Feibai could only smudge his face and follow him. Master, we really don't have a single person. Belt, Feibai advised Chi-Heiran, looking around anxiously. Chi-Heiran said indifferently, aren't you human?